Hey there, and welcome back to Tranquil Talks with Chris. It feels really good to be back behind the mic with you. If you're new here, hello and welcome. I'm so glad that you have found your way into this space. And if you've been listening to my first 6 episodes, thank you. I appreciate your support. And I imagine that you'll have noticed the gap since episode 6, which was recorded and published in early November. I stepped away from the mic at that time because truthfully, I needed more space and time to properly and more fully grieve my beautiful mom who passed away last summer. And at that time, with the holidays coming up, grief was feeling pretty heavy and all-encompassing. So I took additional time in order to focus on that grief. And I also took time to thoughtfully reflect upon and really ultimately crystallize what I want this podcast and my overall work inside of the Lotus Learning Sanctuary to stand for going forward. I'll share a little bit more about that towards the end of today's episode. Right now, I want to get right into today's topic, which is all about the cameras on, cameras off dilemma that is occurring hand over fist in hybrid environments. Today's episode, the idea for it came from my most recent newsletter, also called Tranquil Talks. And that edition was sparked by a lot of frustration and concern about how rigid expectations in today's hybrid working models can and are eroding trust, inclusion, and psychological safety. So it's a topic I don't want to shy away from, and if anything, I want to be exploring it further with you together here on my podcast. This exploration, it's coming from a place of compassion and curiosity and a desire to do better. It's not coming from a place of judgment. So here's the background. Last week, I saw a post on LinkedIn from a speaker coach who was quite frustrated that during a recent virtual workshop that she had facilitated for a corporate client, no one had their cameras on. Literally, it was just herself on camera. No one from the team had their cameras on. She was upset, thrown off, and made it clear that engagement and interaction comes from cameras being on and not from them being off. And I get it to a degree. Based on her work helping speakers command physical stages, I can see why she'd have this perspective. But gotta give it to you straight, it still bugged me. What really sent me over the edge was that every single comment on her post, at least as at the time I was reading, and there were many comments on that post, they were all vehemently in support of what she was sharing, that cameras being on was an absolute must for any virtual conversation. And I would read comments of things like, I am so with you. No cameras on, that means no engagement. It's just common courtesy to have cameras on in today's hybrid world. That's so rude that cameras were off. And look, I am normally a very patient and easygoing person. I do not get upset easily. It actually takes a lot for me to get pissed. But that post immediately got to me because this narrative, this unrealistic expectation that cameras must be on in all hybrid meetings, it's everywhere and it's causing real harm. And that's what I want to talk about. What cameras on is actually costing, and people may not be realizing this. Here's what that post and every comment supporting it completely missed. Camera on does not automatically equal engagement or interaction. And sure, yes, I know it happens where someone might be turning their camera off because they are checked out. They're multitasking. They're doing anything and everything but participating actively in that virtual conversation. I know it happens. You know what else happens? I want to share experiences from my clients. There are about 5 or 6 of them that I wanted to go through. This is what else is happening. We have someone who has social anxiety and they feel sheer, utter panic with camera on. We have someone else who just learned a loved one was rushed to the hospital. They want to honor their commitment of being part of the virtual conversation, but they don't want their tear-stained face, their visible stress and worry visible to all of their colleagues. There is someone who gets sensory overloaded from seeing their own face and that of everyone else's in gallery view for 90 long minutes. There is someone who is neurodivergent and the cognitive load of having to participate or perform on camera is exhausting. There is yet someone else who is experiencing a flare-up of a chronic illness. They barely have the energy to be present, let alone visible on camera. And there is also someone who simply doesn't feel like having their camera on for that particular day or that particular workshop or conversation, what have you. And that's just as valid too. Making cameras a must for everyone, that disregards the needs and sensitivities of others. And quite frankly, it takes away everyone's agency to be an adult and make their own decisions. And I can share for a moment personally, as an introvert, I can tell you straight up that being on camera for hours, that drains my energy faster than almost anything else in a workday. So this rigid cameras on equals engaged thinking or expectation completely ignores a whole whack of things. Personality dynamics, neurodiversity, mental health, preference, and ultimately basic human dignity. I can tell you that when I coach hybrid teams, one of the very first things we work on together is co-creating a team trust blueprint. Ultimately, an agreement on a whole rich set of norms as it relates to ultimately communication. And the best performing teams that I've worked with have built-in flexibility around camera usage because they trust their team members to show up how they need to in order to do their best work. Because ultimately they understand that engagement looks different for different people. So if you're leading a hybrid meeting or facilitating a session, here are 4 shifts that I would love for you to consider. Number 1, stop equating visibility with engagement. Someone truly can be fully present and contributing without their camera on. I assure you, it is possible. In its place, look for participation in the chat through thoughtful questions, through follow-through on action items. Second shift, build in choice, not mandates. You can try saying cameras are welcome, not required as your default. It's important to create space for people to show up as they need to. You know, the good old word that we say, authentically, but it's the truth. And sometimes that'll mean they are not going to be on camera. Thirdly, check your assumptions. Before you decide someone's camera off choice is quote unquote rude, pause and get curious. What might be going on that you can't see? What might they need in order to participate fully? And fourthly, design for inclusivity. If your meeting or workshop design requires cameras to be effective, I'm going to tell you respectfully, that is a design problem. That's not a people problem. It is possible to build in other ways for people to engage. Polls, the chat, breakout discussions, collaborative docs, etc., etc. The sky's the limit. If this topic is hitting home for you, whether as a leader, as a facilitator, even as a team member, I'd love for you to sit with these self-coaching prompts. I've got 4 prompts that you can sit with and ask yourself. Number 1, where am I making assumptions about what, quote, good participation looks like in virtual spaces? 2, what might I be missing about the people I work with when I insist on cameras being on? 3, how can I create more psychological safety around how people show up in hybrid meetings? And 4, what would it look like to trust my team members fully to participate in ways that work for them? I know hybrid work is hard. It is hard enough without adding unnecessary barriers to participation. If there's one thing that I hope that you'll take away from this episode, it's this. Let's please start treating camera use in virtual or hybrid settings as what it really is. It's a personal choice that deserves respect. So, at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned that I had taken some time and crystallized what I want this podcast to be going forward. So before we wrap up, I wanted to spend just a little bit of time sharing a bit about what's changing here on Tranquil Talks with Chris. I don't want this podcast to be something you just passively listen to, although of course you are absolutely welcome to do that. You have full agency for the podcast you listen to, what you choose to listen to, 100%. I want ultimately this to be a learning space on all things communication. Communication is where I focus where I guess I niche in my business, especially within the hybrid workplace. And so I really, truly want this podcast to be what I call a learning lab. I'm emulating how I have built the Lotus Learning Sanctuary, which is my coaching and development space on communication. So I want to emulate that here in my podcast. I want this to be a place where you try new things, where you experiment, and just as importantly, where you feel supported to take that next small step, where you feel that inspiration and insight helps you turn that into action and helps you build momentum towards positive and lasting change, all at your own pace, not at my pace, not at someone else's predefined pace, all at your own pace. So starting next week, I'm going to redesign or relook at how I've been showing up on this podcast and making sure it is something even more intentional and more usable for you, ultimately more valuable for you, my dear listeners. So episodes will continue to be shortish, ideally under the 15-minute mark, even less than that. But now they're going to be designed to be taught as mini masterclasses or micro experiments. Each episode will be focused on one single idea, one single practice or shift you can actually try in your work and in your personal life. Some weeks, I'll invite you to experiment with a new way of communicating. Other weeks, I'll offer a reflection or tool that you can apply immediately, especially if you're navigating hybrid work as a team member or as a leader. My genuine hope is that Tranquil Talks with Chris, this podcast, becomes a resource you want to keep coming back to because it helps you move forward one thoughtful step at a time. Starting next week as well, you'll be able to either keep listening as you have been in audio only on Apple or Spotify, or you'll be able to start watching them as recorded videos on YouTube, whatever feels most supportive for you. If you watch it on YouTube, I'll be frank with you, there will likely be many episodes where it's just me talking to camera to make it feel more personal and more intimate, more directed to you on a one-on-one basis. There certainly will be episodes where I am presenting a deck that I am, quote, teaching you from. And if that's the case for those episodes, please know if you're only choosing to listen through Apple or Spotify, that deck will be linked in the show notes. So no one's going to miss any learnings, no matter how you choose to listen. So all good. I got your back. Thank you so much for being here with me. Truly, it means more than I can properly express. You are always welcome here. And you belong as you are. I cannot wait to meet with you again next week for our very first mini masterclass or micro experiment. Until then, I wish you a wonderful, peaceful rest of your week. Cheers.